I've always believed that life is a test. A long, grueling examination without study guides, just choices and consequences. And somehow, despite everything, I'm still standing. My name is Matilda, and if there's one truth I've clung to, it's this. You can survive anything if you keep showing up. These days, I'm doing better. Liam, my son, my everything, is finally with me again. After years of fighting, after courtrooms and closed doors, he's home. He's 18 now. Strong, smart, sarcastic, with a grin that reminds me so much of his father it stops me cold. But we're good now. We get along in that rare, golden way that happens only when you've both seen the dark and survived it together. He even makes dinner once in a while, burns it mostly, but it's the thought that counts. Still, sometimes when I watch him from across the living room, headphones on, sketching in one of those worn-out notebooks, I drift backward. Not out of regret, no, not that. But memory has its own pull, and it never forgets. I was just a girl when I met Samuel. 19. Naive and wild-hearted. He had this way of talking like everything he said was a secret just for you. We fell into each other quickly, too quickly. Passionate, chaotic, stupid love. I was pregnant within 3 months. He cried when I told him. I thought it meant something then. But love has a strange way of changing shape. It wasn't until after Liam was born that the truth started to peel away. I was called to a strange apartment on a weekday morning. Samuel had been found there in a state I still can't forget. Glassy-eyed, twitching, surrounded by evidence I couldn't deny. Pills. Powder. The whole nightmare laid bare. I remember standing in that hallway, Liam in his carrier, wondering how the man I had loved had become this stranger. The police arrived not long after. Samuel wasn't just using, he was selling. I was caught in the middle, the girl with the newborn and the tarnished boyfriend, suddenly part of a criminal investigation. Carol, Samuel's mother, stepped in. At first, she seemed like a lifeline. "Let me take him for a little while," she said. "Until this all settles." I believed her. I had to. My world was crumbling, and depression crept in like fog, silent, choking, invisible until it was everywhere. I checked into treatment soon after. I remember the sterile white walls of the hospital, the soft knock of nurses, and the aching silence between therapy sessions. I missed Liam like breath. Every night, I dreamed I was still pregnant, still able to protect him from the world. I'd wake up crying. When I finally came home, stronger, clearer, I called Carol. No answer. Again. And again. She wasn't giving him back. And that's when I learned the next betrayal. The depression didn't disappear the moment I left the hospital. Healing wasn't a light switch. It was a slow, stumbling walk in the dark. And just when I thought I had found my footing again, the floor gave out. Carol had filed for full custody of Liam. Permanently. The papers came in the mail on a Wednesday. I sat at the kitchen table holding them in my hands, the words swimming on the page. Unfit parent. Prior drug association. Mental health instability. She made me sound like a monster. But the worst part? She believed it. In her eyes, everything that happened to Samuel was my fault. I had led him down the wrong path, she claimed. I had corrupted him. Her son, the boy who was already slipping away long before I ever met him, was suddenly a victim of my mistakes. I was 19 and alone. I had made choices, yes. But I had never touched drugs in my life. Still, her lawyer spun a convincing story. And the courts, they didn't know me. They didn't see the nights I stayed up watching over Liam's crib with bloodshot eyes. They didn't hear the lullabies or feel the heat of a mother's fear when her baby's temperature spiked. All they saw was paper, diagnoses, assumptions. The judge granted her temporary guardianship. Temporary. That word was supposed to be comforting, like a bandage that would eventually peel away. But it felt like steel bars. Because along with guardianship came a new restriction. No visitation. I couldn't even see him. My baby boy. That's when the real spiral began. Not into drugs, never that, but into the darker corners of myself. Panic attacks. Days where my heart would race, so fast I thought I was dying. I was in and out of the ER, trembling, short of breath, my body rebelling against the pain I couldn't scream out loud. It wasn't until I collapsed at a friend's apartment that someone forced me back into care. This time, it was a heart specialist who sat across from me and said gently, "Matilda, your body is sounding the alarm. You're not broken, but you are in crisis." And somewhere deep inside, something shifted. I began to fight. I scraped together what little savings I had and hired a lawyer. Not a miracle worker. But he listened. Really listened. And he didn't make me feel like a case file. He told me the truth, too. This is going to be uphill. But if Liam wants to see you, that's a start. He filed the first appeal that spring. It didn't bring Liam home, but it cracked the door. The judge granted supervised visits.
2 hours a week.
It was more than I dared hope. I'll never forget that first visit.
He was 10.
Tall for his age. Same messy hair. Same storm gray eyes. He sat stiffly at the table in the social worker's office, a coloring book in front of him. I walked in, heart in my throat. "Hi," I said, afraid to move. He looked up, and for a second there was nothing. Just quiet. Then, "Mom," that one word nearly knocked me off my feet. We spent the whole 2 hours talking. Not about the big things. Not yet. We talked about cartoons, about the dog Carol let him name, about his favorite cereal. I watched every flicker of emotion on his face, like it was gospel. After that, the visits became routine, then longer. And finally, after another court appeal, the supervised part was removed. I could see him freely. I could take him to the movies, the park. He came to my apartment, where we built forts out of couch cushions and watched animated movies on repeat. It wasn't perfect, but it was something real. One night, as I tucked him in on my lumpy old couch, he looked at me and said, "Why can't I live here?" I didn't have an answer. Not one he could understand. So I kissed his forehead and whispered, "Someday." That someday would take years. But I clung to it like a promise. Liam turned 16, the year the court finally listened. It was a quiet moment in a crowded courtroom, just a clerk reading off findings. But for me, it felt like someone had cracked the sky open and let the sun in. The judge's voice was steady as he confirmed, "At this age, the minor may choose which legal guardian he wishes to reside with." And Liam chose me. There was no dramatic declaration, no trembling voice. He just stood up, calm and clear, and said, "I want to live with my mom." Carol didn't fight it, at least not out loud. I think, somewhere in her heart, she had known this was coming.
Still, she didn't speak to me that day.
Not a single word. When we got home, our home, finally ours, I watched Liam drop his duffel bag by the door and walk into the tiny kitchen like he belonged there. He opened the fridge, made a face at the leftovers, then looked at me with a smirk. "We're gonna need to work on that." I laughed harder than I had in months. Living together again wasn't easy. He had habits I didn't remember, long showers, a deep love for ramen noodles, and a tendency to leave socks in the strangest places. And I had my own walls, still up in some places, weathered by years of shame and trying too hard. But slowly, we figured it out. We had inside jokes, shared playlists, arguments about laundry, late-night talks over tea. He told me about school, his friends, how he wanted to take a gap year after graduation and maybe backpack through Oregon. I told him about the time I burned an entire pot of rice because I got distracted by a cooking show. We were mother and son. But we were also something else. Survivors. Allies. And then there was the thing I didn't expect. How much he reminded me of, well, me.
His sarcasm.
His sensitivity. His way of noticing the small things. The older he got, the more I saw myself reflected in his gaze. It scared me a little, because I knew what I had gone through. The pressure, the loneliness, the need to be strong even when I was breaking inside. I didn't want that for him. So when I met Ron, it felt like a small crack of light in a window I thought had long been sealed shut. Ron worked at the grocery store across from where I worked part-time. He was quiet, warm-voiced, with smile lines and an easy laugh. He remembered how I took my coffee. He asked how my day had been and genuinely listened to the answer. We started walking after work, just around the block. Sometimes he brought me flowers wrapped in paper. Sometimes he didn't say anything at all, just walked beside me in silence, the good kind. The kind that felt like company, not absence. But Liam noticed. He didn't say anything at first. Just looked away when I mentioned Ron. Left the room when I got phone calls. One day, I came home and found him rearranging the pictures on the bookshelf. All our photos, me and him, moved to the front. Ron's small birthday card? Tucked behind a book. I confronted him that night. Liam, I said gently, sitting beside him on the couch. You've been distant. He shrugged, eyes on the TV. Just tired. I'm not replacing you, I said. I didn't say you were. But you're upset.
Silence.
Then he muttered, You don't need him. I don't, I said honestly. But maybe I want something more than just surviving now. Liam didn't respond. Instead, he stood, ran a hand through his hair and whispered, I don't like women. It was so sudden I thought I'd misheard. But when I looked up, his face was pale and tight with fear. I don't like women, Mom. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. It felt like 1,000 things I didn't know how to say were crowding my lungs.
He shook his head. Don't ask me anything. Please. I just needed to say it.
Just don't look at me like that. Like what? I whispered. Like you don't know who I am now. I didn't. Not fully. But I wanted to. That night, I sat in my car after a grocery run, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My mind spun in circles, around Ron, around Liam's confession, around the small quiet house that now felt too full of things unsaid. Ron and I drifted apart not long after. No big breakup. No fight. Just a silence that neither of us tried to fix. And yet, through it all, I found myself turning back to Liam, the center of my storm. My reason. One morning, I was in my room getting ready. I'd bought new black lace lingerie, nothing dramatic, just something that made me feel like I still had pieces of myself that were mine. The bedroom door had been left slightly ajar as I moved from closet to mirror, still adjusting the straps. Liam passed by. I heard his footsteps stop. A quiet, awkward knock, not a real one, more a reflex. He blinked, caught off guard.
Whoa. Sorry.
I didn't mean. I laughed softly, startled. Guess I forgot the door.
He paused.
And then he said something that sat with me for a long time. You're still you. You know. I turned to face him. You've been through so much, he said, his voice quiet, almost reverent. But you're still here. Still beautiful. It wasn't a flirtation. It wasn't confusion. It was awe. And something else I recognized. The deep longing of someone who finally feels safe enough to speak what they've never dared to say before. There are moments in life that split things into before and after. You never see them coming until the quiet changes everything. That moment for me didn't come with sirens or heartbreak. It came in the stillness of a Sunday morning. I was standing in the kitchen, flipping pancakes, music humming low from the speaker in the corner. The smell of butter and syrup danced in the air. Liam was leaning on the counter, chin resting in his hand, watching me in that quiet way he did sometimes, like he was studying something too large to understand in one glance. You always look calm when you cook, he said. Cooking doesn't argue back, I teased. He smiled, but there was something else in his eyes. Not sadness. Not even longing. Just intensity. Like he was holding a question he hadn't decided whether to ask. We sat down at the table with our plates, sunlight catching on the syrup pooled around the edges. We talked about nothing, the weather, his favorite breakfast spots, the backpacking trip he still wanted to take. But then the words stopped flowing, and silence, that familiar old friend, slipped between us again. Do you ever feel like, he started then paused, like this life, our life, wasn't supposed to go this way? I tilted my head, setting down my fork. What do you mean? He looked straight at me. That maybe, in some other version of the world, it didn't get broken. My breath caught. He wasn't just talking about Samuel, or Carol, or the courts.
He was talking about us.
I stood, unsure what to say, and walked toward the window. My reflection stared back at me, softened by the sunlight. And behind it, Liam, watching. "You know I'm not gay," he said quietly, as though reading my thoughts from days ago. "I know," I said, not turning around. "It wasn't that. When I told you that before, I didn't want you to think I was ashamed. I just hadn't found anyone who felt real. Not until now." I slowly turned, my fingers resting on the edge of the sink. "Liam, I don't mean to make it complicated," he said. "And maybe it's wrong. Maybe it's just trauma or memory or something weird in our DNA. But I've never met anyone like you. No one who sees me. No one I trust like this." "You shouldn't," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "Not like that." But he didn't flinch. "I don't expect anything. I'm just telling you the truth." The moment passed. The house settled around us. And we didn't speak of it again. Not for days. But it stayed. In glances across the dinner table. In the way our fingers brushed when passing each other the remote. In the questions we asked, and the ones we didn't. Then came the night of the thunderstorm. The power had gone out. The wind howled outside, and the candles on the table flickered like they knew secrets we didn't. Liam was on the couch, sketchbook in his lap, pencil moving in slow arcs. I was beside him with a blanket over my knees, reading a book I couldn't focus on. He looked up, his voice softer than the storm. "Wanna see?" He turned the page to show me. It was a sketch of me. Not flattering, not exaggerated. Just me. Tired eyes. Laugh lines. Bare shoulders. A hint of the collarbone visible beneath the sketch's pencil shading. "I didn't know you drew me like that," I said. "I didn't mean to," he replied. We sat for a long time, neither moving. Just the rain and the low sound of thunder outside. And then, I don't know if it was gravity or memory or loneliness, we leaned in. Our foreheads touched first. Then the bridge of our noses. A pause. A breath. And then a kiss. It was soft. Surreal. Like the air itself gave way beneath it. Neither of us moved after. For a long second it was like being underwater. Timeless. Weightless. When we pulled apart, I didn't speak. I couldn't. I wasn't even sure it had happened. Liam's hands were still on either side of the blanket, clenched. His voice, when it came, was shaking. "Did that happen?" "I don't know." He blinked slowly. "Felt real." "It did." We didn't kiss again. Not that night. Maybe not ever. But something had changed. Not in a way that asked for labels. Not in a way that demanded more. But in a way that said, "We've seen each other." And nothing would erase that. It's been 2 years since that night. Liam is in college now, an hour's drive away.
He comes home some weekends. Calls often.
We talk about everything. And nothing. And sometimes the in-between. I've started painting again. Not seriously. But enough to fill the quiet with color. Sometimes, when I miss him more than I can handle, I walk into the room where we sat during the storm, and I sit in the same place on the couch. I don't replay the kiss. Not anymore. But I remember what it felt like to be truly seen. And I hold on to that. Because love isn't always tidy. It isn't always definable. But sometimes, it's the thing that pulls you from the dark and says, "You're still here." And that matters. Even when the past has teeth. Even when the road was never supposed to twist this way. We are still here. And that's where the light comes in.